Welcome to the broadcast ministry of Irvington Bible Baptist Church, located in Indianapolis, Indiana. Join us for today's Bible study with Pastor Paul Malin.
Because we do tend to try to cheat the system. We try to take the easy road whenever we can, and we don't like to go through the hard stuff. And that's what we're going to look at here real quick this morning, 2 Samuel chapter 16. And we're going to look here at verses 1 and 2. Then I'm going to go back and talk a little bit about the history, about how we got to chapter 16, verses 1 and 2. And then we're going to hopefully be able to draw something out of here. There'll be an encouragement to you and also a challenge for you here this morning. So if you look at 2 Samuel chapter 16, verse 1 says, "And when David was a little past the top of the hill, behold, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, and 100 bunches of raisins, and 100 of summer fruits, and a bottle of wine. And the king said unto Ziba, What meanest thou by these? And Ziba said, The asses be for the king's household to ride on, and the bread and summer fruit for the young men to eat, and the wine that such as be faint in the wilderness may drink." So here we have it where it says that David went a little past the top of the hill. A little past the top of the hill. David had a lot of hills to climb in his life, didn't he? He had a lot of hills to climb. This particular hill that he had to climb is in relationship to Absalom, his son. He was climbing this hill in direct relationship to a situation and an issue that he had with Absalom. And so just real quick, just to bring you up to speed, what's going on here with David. In 2 Samuel chapter 11, you have David's great sin with Bathsheba, right? You have David's great sin with Bathsheba and Uriah the Hittite. Let's not forget him. Everybody always wants to talk about Bathsheba and poor Bathsheba and everything else. But Bathsheba got to live the rest of her life in the king's palace, right? Uriah the Hittite, was set up to die for no real good reason. But that's in chapter 11. Chapter 12, you have Nathan, the prophet of God, calling David out and calling him out on the carpet and letting him know that he didn't get away with what he thought he got away with, right? And then David did right with that, by the way. David didn't say, off with his head, throw him in the dungeon or anything else that a king more likely than not would have done. I mean, think about it. He went through all the pain and suffering and planning and everything else in order to cover up his sin. It would make sense at that point when the prophet of God came and told him, says, I know what you did. Well, you're out of here, right? But David didn't do that because David had the heart of God and David repented. David repented in things. But that doesn't mean that David got away with it. You do reap what you sow, right? So then in chapter 13, you have recorded the Amnon and Tamar affair. Pun intended, right? And you have the Amnon and Tamar affair where Amnon had improper sexual thoughts and desires for his half-sister Tamar, right? Took advantage of her and all that. And she was the full sister of Absalom. Okay? And so Absalom, rightfully so, wanted Amnon to pay with his life for what he did. But for David, it was his son, all that kind of a thing, right? So in Absalom's opinion anyhow, David didn't do right in that situation. So that fractured their relationship, right? And so Absalom goes off to live with Grandpa, okay, king of Geshur. And he goes off the scene. Then in chapter 14, it records Joab's attempt to reconcile Absalom and David, because David loved Absalom. He was his son, right? And David down in the dumps and everything else about Absalom and everything else. So Joab thought, well, you know what? We need to get Absalom back over here and everything else. And he did some trickery and things to try to make that happen. And but he finally was able to get Absalom back in town. And then it took another couple of years before Absalom and David actually ever spoke. And things along those lines. But that's what was recorded in chapter 14. And then in chapter 15, you have recorded Absalom's conspiracy to cause a revolt, to try to overtake and steal the kingdom from David. And that's what's going on. Okay? And David, not because David was a scaredy cat, not because David was afraid of a fight, right? This is David. He was well renowned. He killed Goliath with a sling. Right? He fought off lions and tigers and bears. Oh my! Right? Barehanded when he was taking care of his daddy's sheep. He wasn't afraid of a battle. He wasn't afraid of a battle at all. That's not why he ran. He didn't run because he's afraid of a battle. He took off because, clearly he didn't want to kill his son. And he was also concerned about all the innocent people that would suffer through the battle if they had a battle there in Jerusalem. So David decides to go ahead and leave Jerusalem, and that's where we're at. That's where we're at here. Okay? So there's two quick things. Now you got the history, you know what's going on. You understand why it is that David is climbing this hill. You understand why it is that somebody has to come and bring him victuals and all this stuff. Okay? That's what's going on. So two quick things to notice about this passage, two quick things maybe that you can be encouraged on and or be challenged about in your own life. And the first thing of which is just simply notice the high place that David reached. The high place that he reached. It says that when David was a little past the top of the hill. A little past the top of the hill. Ziba didn't show up till after David was a little past the top of the hill. Have you ever climbed a big hill? It could be hard work. It could be hard work. And your footing is not so sure a lot of times, and it takes a lot of energy. And a lot of, sometimes it just be a grueling task to get to the top of the hill. Things like that. And that's what we have pictured here. That David had to go through everything that he had to go through to get to the top of that hill. That's what David had to do. David had to do that work, right? I was out trail hiking, geocaching, and a mixture of other things over at Fort Bend a few weeks ago. And there was one that was like half mile off to the west or whatever. And I'm like, well, I can climb up this really steep hill, or I can go back 50 yards and go to the trailhead where it has a nice, easy slope trail to get you back up to the same place. You know which one I chose, right? The steep hill. The steep hill, because it was shorter. But it was a lot harder. It was a lot harder to do. And it was hard to find too, by the way. But anyway, climbing up steep hill, it can be hard work. It can be hard. Sometimes people wonder, well, why do people climb mountains? Why do people climb mountains? And there's varying different reasons why people might climb mountains. Does she think I'm going to make her climb a mountain? I might. She don't straighten up. I don't know. There's lots of reasons why people climb mountains. Because they're there, because it's a challenge, or whatever. I don't know exactly why people climb mountains and do all those kinds of things. But here's what I do know. If you get on top of the mountain, or you get on top of a high hill in the backcountry out somewhere, it changes your perspective. It changes your perspective. You can see a lot better. Things make a lot more sense to you after you get up to the top. It'll change that's a universal truth. It will change your perspective once you get up to the top of the hill. David here, he needed to do the work. He had to go through the effort. He had to suffer through the experience in order to get to the top of the hill. In order to reach that high place. He had to do the work. He had to go through it. And just like the disciples in Mark chapter 6 were told, they were told to go to the other side of the Sea of Galilee. Then when they were about halfway across, that big storm came and everything else, and everybody, applauds Peter for having the faith and everything to jump out of the boat and try to walk on the water with Jesus. And I'm not better than Peter. I'm not saying that, but I am saying this. He wasn't supposed to ever get out of the boat. He wasn't supposed to get out of the boat. His great faith that he got out of the boat. He wasn't supposed to get out of the boat. Listen, has it ever occurred to you that nothing has ever occurred to the Lord? In other words, the Lord knew the storm was coming. It's not, I didn't think about that. He knew the storm was coming. They're supposed to go through the storm. Sometimes we're just supposed to go through the storm. We're supposed to do the work that it takes us to get a little past the top of the hill. That's what we're supposed to do. You have to go through the struggle so you can reap the blessings. Which brings us to point number 2. The provision that David received. The provision he received. It said, Ziba, the servant of Mephibosheth, met him with a couple of asses saddled, and upon them 200 loaves of bread, 100 bunches of raisins, 100 summer fruits, a bottle of wine, all this stuff that David got. But before any of those blessings, he had to do what was necessary to get a little past the top of the hill. And if you'll do what's necessary, if you'll go through the struggle instead of always trying to find a way to avoid it, then you too can receive the blessing.